Welcome to The Craft. I'm your host, May Globus. This podcast is a collection of intimate conversations on artistry, mastery, and life with talented, passionately curious creatives and entrepreneurs. Most are dear friends, some are those I've admired from afar. I hope you enjoy these conversations, this exploration of the humanity that connects all of us, as much as I do having them. Thank you for being here and for listening. Born in Vancouver and shaped by the spirit of the 1960s and 70s, Gary Lenett, founder and CEO of denim brand DUER, grew up between two contrasting parental influences. His mother was cautious and conservative, a loving stay-at-home mom whose anxiety left a lasting imprint. His father, who lost his own parents at the age of 12 during the Great Depression, was larger than life, charismatic, courageous, and comfortable with risk, sometimes a little too comfortable. A former teacher and lawyer, Gary's no stranger to starting anew, with these two forces of caution and boldness continuing to inform the way he moves through the world and navigates business. He has spent decades in the apparel industry, building one of the largest denim manufacturers in North America. At 48, he lost everything while raising 3 young children, beginning again with a deeper sense of risk, resilience, and what truly matters. But this conversation is about far more than business. It is about the opposing energies that shape us: openness and discernment, discipline and surrender, fear and trust. From a young age, Gary sensed something profound within, but didn't yet have the words to describe it. A lifelong admirer of The Little Prince and a self-described curious skeptic, he eventually found his way to meditation and a philosophy rooted in presence, honesty, compassion, and non-attachment. In this open-hearted episode, we talk about failure, fear, profit and purpose, what enough means after a life marked by both collapse and renewal. It's a dialogue about being self-led, surrendering to what is, and the art of building not only a meaningful business, but a meaningful life. Please enjoy this rich and candid conversation with the wonderfully wise Gary Lenett. Gary, welcome to The Craft.
Hi,
Hello.
How are you?
I'm feeling great. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Me too.
How are you feeling in this moment?
I'm feeling good. I had to I was busy morning, and so I had to sort of just settle myself down a little bit, and I'm feeling good now.
Okay, that's great. Well, I wanted to say that I've really enjoyed the past couple of conversations that we've had. I feel like I've obviously gotten to know you better, and I also feel that I could see a real depth and beauty to your spirit, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would love to go back in time. I would love to go back to your family and young Gary and your parents. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about them and what they taught you?
Well, yeah, I mean, my parents, if you'd asked me any other question, I probably would have tried to take you back to my parents in my childhood, because to understand me, you sort of have to understand. I mean, I don't want to overstate it, because I, in many ways, had a wonderful upbringing, but my parents were the most opposite people you could ever imagine in your world. And so my mother was the least risk. She was the most risk-adverse person I've ever met to this day. Tons and tons of anxiety. And she was a good mother, but she was extremely anxious and fearful of everything. And my father was this swashbuckling, crazy cowboy risk taker who, to the point of being reckless. And these two were married they stayed together for 60 years. But I was, when almost anything else you ask me, I feel like it's all sort of informed by me growing up with these two opposites, because I've got both of them inside of me. And so I myself am a bit of an enigma, right? I'm a bunch of contradictions. And so, yeah, I mean, my parents have long passed. And, I like to think that, there's a statute of limitations on any type of blaming parents. I'm a father of three, so I'm not really blaming them for anything. They had their own family of origin issues that made them who they were, but just crazy, crazy different, and in every single way. And it really, I've had to reconcile both of them within myself.
And what did you learn? What do you take from each one of them? Like, what is the main seed that was planted in you from your mother and your father?
Well, what I take from them from an intellectual perspective, I'm not sure. It was much more emotional. What I got from them is that from the time I was a young boy, I picked up on my mother, and in fact, it runs right through her family. My grandmother's anxiety. My mother literally died of anxiety. I mean, I'm not going to go into details, but she was an extremely fearful person. And I had to deal with that as a child because I picked it up. I was the firstborn and I picked it up. I don't know if it's in my genes, if it's nature or nurture, but I had to deal with that from a very young age. This sort of generalized anxiety. And then my father, who didn't really respect that in my mother and was like to take risks and was really out there. And I was, again, the firstborn son. And so I had to reconcile that anxiety with what he wanted out of me, which was to be someone like himself who just went at life, lived deeply. And so I think, did I take anything from... I don't know. I am who I am. I've had to just learn to live with these contradictions that are inside of me.
Did it feel confusing when you were younger to witness the contradictions?
Yes. Yeah, because I had a lot of shame around the fear, right? Especially because, I didn't want to be, I was extremely, as a young boy, I think the fear, the anxiety made me quite shy. I was quite creative. I didn't have, I spent a lot of time on my own, drawing and painting and stuff like this. And this wasn't really what my father, I'm sure, it's not who he was. And so I had this sort of, put it this way, I've been in therapy for 40 years and I'm still dealing with that, trying to reconcile those two pieces and just figure out, I often, Joseph Campbell is one of my favorite authors, and he talks about the hero's journey being, the challenge of lifetime. I'm using my own words, is to figure out who you are. And it just, I think we all have this challenge, and mine was particularly extreme, the pieces that I had to sort of reconcile, if that makes any sense.
Of course. Do you enjoy this process of discovery of yourself and the reconciliation?
It's all I've known. Yeah, like my wife laughs at me because even going back to my 40th birthday, people would ask if I'm having a midlife crisis, and that was many years ago. I don't actually consider 40 midlife anymore, but and my wife would always facetious. He goes, "Gary's been having a midlife crisis since he was 5 years old, right? He's always wrestling, right? And that's my nature. I wrestle with things and try to, yeah."
But I have you found peace with that, the wrestling?
I think I have. I was listening to this podcast the other day by this Harvard professor who teaches a course on happiness, and he was because happiness is obviously a very difficult thing to measure objectively, and he gave some. I'm not going to go into it, but he had a whole bunch of criteria, and I went through this self-evaluation, and I came out pretty high on the happiness scale. I don't know if I love that word because I don't know if I'm happy is the right word. And like certainly fulfillment. I feel a lot of fulfillment with where I am in my life right now. I feel so grateful every day. I can't tell you. So I guess in that respect I have.
That's beautiful. What a place to come to in one's life.
I feel very lucky.
I'd love to talk about before DUER, before the denim empire you built. There was the teaching, there was the law school, and being the first in your family to go to university. In that time of these various different phases, what do you feel that you were actually building within yourself during that time?
Well, I think, I have gone, being an entrepreneur was a third career for me. And so I think being a teacher and a lawyer, very different skill sets I learned. I use all of them all the time. But I'd say underneath sort of that journey, where I went, obviously tried a number of different careers before I landed as entrepreneur. And by the way, I've been an entrepreneur for 40 years, so this is a long time ago. But I think I was really, I'd go back to sort of that struggle that I have, that I learned how to, whether it was through the stress of law school or standing up in court, I think I built the toolkit that really served me well in terms of my own personal habits, right? So I often say it takes a whole team of people to keep me going. But seriously, from my early 20s, I was one who sought help. I had my father. I was ambitious, but I was also extremely fearful and anxious. And how did so for me, like I had a meditation practice since I was in my early 20s. In my 20s, I sought out someone who taught me self-hypnosis. I've always had some sort of physical training regimen. I have a meditation teacher. Like there's a whole team of people to keep me just sort of functioning. I'm not even going to say highly functioning, just functioning.
Yes.
But I realize now that the anxiety sort of served me because, if I just sort of been a normal kid and didn't sort of develop this team and learn these habits, what's the expression? You can't learn how to swim when you're falling out of a boat, right? So it allowed me to have all these sort of deeply ingrained habits that really put me in good stead for some of the challenges that I would face when I was older.
I love that you say team because I've often said that to friends that we all need our support team. So that could be, and of course this is, if you have the means to do this, but you have your therapist and maybe you have your acupuncturist, your energy worker, and a solid group of friends that you could turn to. We don't have to do, and we shouldn't do life alone. And it's nice to have that support team.
Yeah. I mean, there was points in my life that I probably wouldn't have bragged about it. I might have even been a little bit embarrassed that I needed so much help just to sort of, be highly functioning. But no, I completely agree with you. I think, we look at everybody else and we say, oh, they have it easy. But I'm sure, everybody struggles with, everybody's got their pain is what a friend of mine always says. And I think it's that inner work that allows us to do the outer work, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I often think when I'm walking down a street that, you may brush shoulders with someone and they're in their own universe, they're in their own story. And so every day you're brushing past all of these stories that you don't know or understand, and maybe you'll never know.
Totally.
Which is, it's beautiful. I believe there is an expression, I'll have to look it up, but in Korean that speaks about the many universes and stories on the street every day. Yeah, which is really beautiful. I wanted to explore, you've built one of the largest denim manufacturers in all of North America. And, part of your story is at 45, there was a loss of of much of it, and you're 45 with young kids. In that moment when that happened, what do you feel was stripped away?
Yeah, okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to do a little bit of fact checking here, or
Sure.
whatever the
Yes,
word
yes.
is. So I was actually a little bit older. I was 48. I actually figured that out yesterday. I was thinking, okay, how old was I when and at 48, I lost everything I had. And the other thing, though, I just want to correct, it wasn't just me. So I went from, I was asked by my brother and father, I was practicing law, and I was asked by my brother and father to come in and help with a small fledgling family business. And so I left my law practice, took a sabbatical, ended up staying. And so it wasn't just me that built that large denim manufacturer. That was my brother and I in particular. Just want to make sure I don't take all the credit where it's not deserved. And we built, so on paper, we were one of the largest denim manufacturers in North America. That was in a time when domestic manufacturing was a thing. It went the way of the dinosaur. Everybody's gone now pretty much. But, and we built it over about a 15-year period. And then due to a whole bunch of sort of macroeconomic things that happened and some mistakes we made, it all came crashing down when I was in my late 40s. And it was truly the most awful time of my life. I laid off hundreds and hundreds of people, many of whom I'd worked with for many, many years. I had personal guarantees, so I owed the banks, our financing partners, I owed them millions of dollars, and really had to start over again, which was shocking. And I remember it manifested with physical problems. I had to have back surgery right that same year, which is not unusual, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and just really, I felt like I was dying, like just, to have something it was my worst nightmare, other than the physical health of one of my family members. I could not imagine a worse scenario. Like, at that age, I had children my youngest was 4. I had 2 girls, I had 3 children, 4, 8 and 9, I believe, were their ages at the time. And just, owing all that money and not having really any means of repaying it at the time, and not knowing what my future looked like. And it was just awful, awful. But I think, to your question, if I remember it, more than that is that my whole identity was tied up in this. I was a successful businessman. And I was a successful teacher, I was a successful lawyer, I was a successful businessman. All of a sudden, first of all, I'm not successful at all. I'm the opposite. I'm a failure. And that's how I was feeling at the time. And secondly, I wasn't anything. I wasn't a businessman. I didn't, it all disappeared. Now, I did build it back up, and I sort of dug myself out. But it was really a pivotal moment for me in terms of understanding, because I did wake up the next morning after my worst nightmare, and I was still there. So I didn't disappear. That sort of unchanging part I was able to access. And I think that, and it's only, I couldn't have said this to you, May, 20 years ago. I'm not Superman. I went through quite a process for a long time, probably about 6 or 7 years, to sort of come back from that. But when I look now back after 20 years, there's a Buddhist saying, what is good, what is bad? It's probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because I learned some things. I got to start over. And now I had the privilege of starting over and creating DUER, my current business, which has been really the privilege of a lifetime. So if it hadn't been for that pain, I don't think I would be where I am right now.
It almost sounds like its own form of ego death that happened. And, then there was the proverbial rise from the ashes from that. But it sounds like it's form of ego death.
Yeah, I don't use those words because they might sound a little melodramatic, but that's what it felt like, for sure. It really did feel, and part of me did die. There's a part of me that died, and in terms of, just how I looked at myself and how I had to, I was reborn in some ways.
And was there, you had the tools to come back to yourself almost immediately, which is nice. Was there an actual turning point in that 6 or 7 years in this sort of comeback period where there was a spark that was like, okay, like now it's go time for whatever era is coming next?
Yeah, I think, again, I don't want to exaggerate or maybe minimize is the right word, how difficult that period was for me. And that, that I woke up the next morning and I was fine. Like, it was a process. I think, though, when I started conceptualizing DUER and what I wanted to do in the last frame. I mean, this is the last brand I'm building. This is the 5th brand I built, and it's the last one. I'm 68 years old. But I came at it from a really different place emotionally than I had before. So I'd built 4 other brands, and I'd built this other, manufacturing business, and I had licenses and stuff. But I think going through what I did at midlife, when you go through your worst fears, like worse than you could imagine, because I couldn't imagine going through what I went through. And then over time, you realize that you're okay. I actually lost my fear. I actually lost a lot of my fear. I mean, I'd already gone through it, and I was still okay. And so there was like there was sort of a light bulb turned on at one time, but I'm not going to say it was like immediately. It was a process, and I realized, hey, I'm okay. And I think that my success in the last, 10, 12 years, 15 years has really come out of this sort of what I call blue sky space, as opposed to sort of fear or anxiety-driven space, right? It's more coming out of a space of abundance.
And open-heartedness.
Yes, very much.
I feel too, when one goes through these difficult moments, just reflecting on when I left my corporate job during the pandemic to pursue the things that I really wanted to do, that felt like I needed to do them in the soul, one being this podcast, and one being becoming a certified sound therapy practitioner. I just had to, even though I was scared, I had to leap off the cliff and imagine that I would grow wings on the way down, and that I would be fine and I'd be okay and I'd have the support that I need. And guess what? There was.
Yeah.
There was. And similar to you, staying where I was manifesting physical ailments that couldn't be explained by Western medicine, could be explained by Eastern medicine. But you just have to sometimes just jump off the cliff and hope that all will be okay. And it will be. And you're right. Your relationship to fear evolves because you've been there before. And
For sure.
I agree with that. And where do you sit with fear now?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say that I don't think this part of me that I, from this beginning of our conversation, I talked about my mom's anxiety. I picked that up as a child, or maybe it's in my DNA. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to say that I am not fearful at all. I still go up and down. I double down on my meditation practice because that's for me is really, that's almost like air to me, right? I have to do that just to manage my anxiety, but it is a lot less than it used to be. Now, look, there's some real pragmatic reasons for that too. My kids are grown and gone. I'm financially secure. I don't really work because of money anymore. So all these things make it a little bit easier. I'm not going to put myself on a pedestal and say, like, sometimes life can just either knock you down or make it easier, just sort of external circumstances. But I think, the internal work I do keeps it in check. I think that I also have a real different, so my sort of relationship with risk has changed, like the way I calculate risk and just how I make decisions. And so I'm just not in a place where it doesn't dominate me anymore. Every once in a while, it sort of pokes its head up and I go, okay, thank you. I understand you helped me before,
Yes.
You kept me safe, right? You kept me, because fear and anxiety is about keeping you, it's a part of you indicating to look at something.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. It's a
But
light.
I don't really need it right now, right? I'm fine.
And I suppose if you can see it and acknowledge it and allow it to
Exactly.
move along.
Exactly.
Move along.
Oh, there you are again.
Hello, old friend.
Hello, old friend. But I'm okay. You just stay there. I got this. I don't need you to, in order to be successful, I don't need to be fearful. I can just be self-led, right?
Oh, I love that. Being self-led. Something that you said to me in a previous conversation was you called yourself a curious skeptic, which sort of goes back to this juxtaposition in your earlier years. And I wanted to explore that. So I wanted to know how you balance openness and discernment at the same time.
Yeah, it's like, so I try, my aspiration is to be open to everybody and everything. But if we can hold two thoughts at the same time, I also believe very much in keeping my critical thinking hat on, right? To not just sort of, especially in today's world where you're getting bombarded with all these messages, whether it's through social media or whatever, news. And I don't really, I'm like everybody else, I don't know what to trust and what not to trust. So I encourage my kids, say that I know it drives them crazy, but I say, don't take that soundbite for what it may seem, right? Do your own research. Use your own independent thinking to figure it out. So yeah, it's both, right? I try to be open. I think that the openness, I think, if I may, I think it comes from humility, which I like. I think that's really important. Like, I don't know everything. I don't even know, I know very little, in fact. So I have to stay open, but I also am distrustful of necessarily superficial or sound bites or stuff that, I'm both.
No, absolutely. And I know what you mean when you're talking about these sound bites and the advice that you're giving your children, because I think of a sound bite like an iceberg, really. You're just seeing the tip of something, but there's a whole story and whole context that's hidden, and you have to look for it. And so one must have critical thinking these days.
Yeah. And I think especially when it seems black and white. Like, to me, if I've learned anything in the world, like any topic that I know well, I know the topics that you know well, I'm sure that's where you see the gray, right? The complexity, the nuance. If you don't know a topic, you can't, it's just going to seem black and white, or it can come off as being black and white, and it rarely is.
And it's just like humans, we're so multi-layered, and like you said, we're all complex beings.
Yeah.
And that's what truly makes us beautiful and difficult and messy and all of those things. I wouldn't have it any other way. Anyone who seems too 2D, got to explore a little bit. You have to ask a few more questions, I think.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me, and I don't want to lose this train of thought, that you really enjoy the book The Little Prince. And I was wondering, what about that book has stayed with you?
Yeah, it is one of my favorite books. I recommend it all the time. I haven't read it from cover to cover for actually, and quite a number of years. I've read it many times. I think I read it first when it's a book, if anybody's listening and you're like 18 years old, that's the perfect time to read it because, it's such a lovely um, uh, parable. And what do I take out of it? I think the thing is that what's important in life is not what you can see, but what you can't see, right? I think that's really, what's really material or important or in life is really the stuff that's invisible. It's, I can use, it sounds old fashioned, but words like, love, relationship, loyalty, all those things, not things or things you can see, but they're generally relational and they're invisible and they can't be measured easily, right?
And they're more felt.
They're more felt. It's more, when I talk about being self-led, that like, my anxiety and, well, some good thing. I'm pointing at my head right now, but my anxiety comes from my thoughts. A lot of good things come from my head too. That critical thinking comes from my head. But truly, if you want to live a life that's really rewarding and in my view meaningful, I think it's again being self-led, which is about coming from your heart, right? That's what's important. And I think, that was just a really beautiful parable to express that.
There's this institute called the Heart Math Institute where they measure the electromagnetic field of your people's hearts and how during meditation or connection, that energetic field of the heart grows and grows and grows, and it encompasses everything that it touches, which is so beautiful. So yes, we should be
I
heart
didn't know
and
that. That's
self-led.
really interesting.
Yes, the Heart Math Institute often works with Joe Dispenza, and they explore heart energy and meditation. So that's where I first heard of it. But anyways, I thought that was really beautiful. The word effortless, I noticed that it had come up in a few of our previous conversations too, and I wanted to know, effortless or living an effortless life, what does that mean to you? Because it doesn't sound like it means easy.
No, definitely not easy. Yeah, another contradiction, right? So that word in particular, as opposed to the feelings behind the word, comes up for me a lot because our mission at DUER is to help people live effortlessly. And when I speak about it, I usually speak on two levels. One is just literally, we put sort of power, stretch, and gussets and all these performance attributes into our clothing to help you move. It literally helps you move, takes you less energy to move when you have a pair of pants on that can move with you and not be so rigid. So there's, that's often the context I'm speaking, but really it does come down to more of my personal mission and sort of the higher level meaning of effortless to me is really this concept of flow, which has always fascinated me. Again, probably because I was so anxious, and when you're in your head and you're anxious, you get glimpses of flow. No one lives in flow, but there's no way you're doing it if you're in your head, right? It comes back again. It has to be sort of you're self-led. And when you say, is it easy? No, I think a lot of people think of flow, or their experience with flow has come from maybe athletic endeavors or maybe something artistic, when it's, if you think about an athlete or any sport that I've mastered, it's literally thousands of hours of practice before you get into flow. It's what you get into flow because you've actually developed these habits that take you out of your head. You don't have to think about it anymore. You can just be, right? You can be completely present. You can be, breathing, present, and completely immersed in what you're doing. And many people describe this feeling that the ball gets bigger or the hole gets bigger or time slows down, but it's because you're not in your head, right? And I just, it's what I strive for. It's probably what what motivates most of what I do is to get that feeling. And there's, I've learned over the years, there's different ways of doing it. There's some are more onerous, and some I've learned some hacks over the years, and again, I want to be clear, May, this is glimpses. This is not all the time.
Yes.
Anybody knows me knows I'm wrestling most of the time, struggling, right? I'm not in flow, but you get glimpses, it becomes really worthwhile.
How do you know in your body that you're in flow?
Oh, it's just this feeling. I was in retreat. Often after I come back from retreat, that's when it's most pronounced. And like, I remember just standing, we were getting ice cream. My wife and I are getting ice cream. And there was music playing. And I had just come out of retreat. I'd been in retreat for 8 days. And I was completely relaxed. I was completely sort of in my body. I wasn't anxious at all. Very rare for me. And this song from the 70s came on. And I just started moving with the song, right? Just naturally. It's not really natural for me. Like it just feels like you're in rhythm with life. I don't know how else to say it. But it's not it's not an intellectual thing. It's like, it's very much in your body. Your breathing is usually very regulated when you're in flow. Like you're just,
it's like an intuitive response. You just intuitively started to move because that's what felt good.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because one of the hacks is that I learned was who are you? This is what I say to myself. I learned this, I forget the guy's name, but I'm going to remember it in a second. But who are you if you have no problems to solve? So I ask myself that if I want to get like into that. Who are you if you have no problems to solve? It's a really interesting hack because if you think about it, if you have absolutely no problems to solve, what do you're moving out of your brain, right? You don't need your brain working, right? You're just completely present and immersed in the moment. If you're not trying to solve any problems, most of the time I'm, trying to figure out, what am I going to say next? What am I going to do next? How am I going to help so-and-so? But that's an interesting hack. I want to give credit to where I'm trying to think. Locke Kelly.
Locke Kelly.
Locke Kelly.
And so how would you answer that in this moment?
Who am I if I'm just me? Like and that's where I like to be. That's what I mean by self-led. Like I'm not defined by, I'm CEO of DUER. I'm, Toby and Harold's son. I'm not defined by any of that. I'm just me. I'm that sort of, I talked earlier, there is a place that, and I don't access this very often, but that part of you that's just, it's been constant. It's always been there. It's unchanging, right? It doesn't matter. I could go bankrupt. I could own the bank $1 million. I could, nothing can get at this because it's inside of me and it's beautiful and we all have it. And if you can come from that space, then, which is rare, I don't, but it's aspirational.
I call it the secret garden.
Absolutely. That's a great label.
And it doesn't always have to be secret. You can share that with others, but it's the place that you can return to. It's your home.
I like that.
Yeah, the secret garden is your home.
Yeah, you're much more succinct. I could have just said, I'm home. I'm going home.
Going home.
Yeah, perfect.
You had mentioned these values that you live by or you try to align with: presence, honesty, compassion. What pulls you away from that, and how do you bring yourself back?
What pulls me away from being sort of aligned
Present.
with my
Oh, yes,
values?
exactly.
Yeah, my anxiety. I mean, I know I'm being one note here. I'm saying the same thing,
Yeah.
but it really is my anxiety will pull me away from that. And as I say, most of my anxiety and my fears now are not. When I was younger, they could have been founded in some reality, but I really don't have anything to be anxious about, to tell you the truth, within my sphere of control. Right? There's a lot of things to be anxious about in this world, but not the stuff that and I think this is a part answer. I'm rambling a bit, but is that I think the way that I bring myself back is, okay, I'm worried about X, which is taking me away from myself, maybe how I ideally want to show up in the world. Because, it's hard to really, really be present and listening to someone, showing compassion, if you're worried about something else, right? So I think I have to go to that worry, and I have to, is it something that I can do anything about? Is it within my, and that's a trick I've only learned again in the last 20 years, to really separate what's within my sphere of control, what I can have influence over. If it's not, I try to get rid of it. And that brings me back.
I mean, we mostly don't have control of much, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And you sort of have to.
Well, I do have control how I'm showing up in this moment
of course,
myself.
But
But
externally,
I don't have control over political stuff in the United States, or tariffs, or whatever, economic or political, or even, and I think that this, maybe I don't know if I could have in one of your other questions, because I think also I look at and I try to separate, given who I am, I have to separate possibilities from probabilities. I don't worry about possibilities anymore. You asked me about my relationship to risk earlier.
Yes.
And I think that's really a big thing for me that I've learned, is that if there's a probability, say in business, because I am a risk taker, and say there's a probability of a risk that I'm going to take that would actually be the demise of the company, I won't take that risk. Right? I will take risks, and I have a certain risk assessment tool that I use in my head, but that's sort of the bottom line.
Yes.
If it's
there's mitigation that's happening.
If it's going to create what I call there's the old analogy from the 20th century. If it's going to create a hole below the waterline, right? That's not a risk you want to take.
Right. You don't want to get below that.
You're always going to lose sometimes if you're an entrepreneur. In fact, I tell young entrepreneurs, if you're not losing some of your bets, if you're not taking some swings and missing, then you're probably not taking enough risk.
And you're not learning.
Right? Don't tell me you're an entrepreneur if you're taking no risk and you're not losing some, because it's impossible. But you just really calibrating the level of risks you're taking, and what happens if you're not successful.
Right. What do you do in the aftermath of
making
failure?
Making sure that you can come back, that you can learn and come back. And so I know that's sort of general, but it helps me.
And do you feel that when you impart that wisdom, do you feel that young entrepreneurs take it to heart? Learn to fail as well?
Yeah, some do. I mean, I actually talk to a fair amount of young people. I consider part of my responsibility as an old guy to talk to people who ask me questions. And I would say there's probably 20 or 30% of people who think they want to be entrepreneurs who realize that they actually are not prepared to lose at all. Like they don't want any risk. And that's great. They figured out it's not for them.
Right. It's best to
realize
that.
They should get a job, right? And I was a lawyer at one time, and I gave my clients lots of advice, but none of it was, I didn't have to, I give them options, right? I got a paycheck whether, right, that if you don't want to actually take the risk, then you should probably do something else, just have a regular job.
Mm. Do you feel that in order to be a successful entrepreneur, there's certain inherent traits that someone should have, or can some of it be learned?
Yeah, can you learn to be an entrepreneur?
I feel
There's
like you
certainly, you
need a
can learn
certain
the
amount of grit.
skills. You can learn the skills.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think you can. I'm going to reverse I think you can, because I think it really comes back. So you might not have the right, like I didn't have the right nature. Remember, I'm this combination of my mom and dad, right? So that wasn't perfect for me to be an entrepreneur. And so I guess I would say, if you're committed to building that resilience muscle, again, through, making sure that you're physically in shape, that you're sleep well, that you eat well, that you can self-soothe when things go bad, whether through hypnosis or meditation or whatever it is. I mean, I learned. I wasn't purely again, I'm this weird mix. I wasn't a pure entrepreneur. I had too much fear to be a pure entrepreneur.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
I think,
so you can.
I guess I have
Yes.
taught myself.
I guess
in
an
some ways.
experience,
Yeah.
you can learn along the way. Huh.
I think what you can learn is if you're maybe not, if you're not sure how you would deal with setbacks, you can learn how to become more resilient. You can build the toolkit to make you more resilient. I think resilience is something you can learn.
Mm. Yeah, it's the ability to bounce back from
Yeah. So I just
the
switched
tower
my
moments.
answer.
I love it. We didn't have to circle back, as they say. You've seen many cycles in the industry that you're in. What lesson took the longest to land?
What
As in,
business
in
lesson?
business, business lesson, entrepreneurship lesson.
What lesson took the longest to learn? Again, I feel, and this is again maybe idiosyncratic, but most of what I've learned has come out of pain. And so, I had to have this pivotal moment where I lost everything and I learned a lot. In terms of business lessons, I'm trying to think. I think the biggest thing, if I go back to what I learned from a more, if I get away from sort of the emotional side to sort of more pragmatic side, is that I think what I learned is that I actually only own approximately 40% of my company. And I'm the single largest shareholder, but I only own 40%. And so I did that on purpose. My founding partner set up a factory to support it. I took on investors. I'd never done that throughout the rest of before in my career. And I think, again, we'll circle back to that risk thing. I knew I was taking a big risk. I knew I was 56 years old when I started it. And I think it took me a long time to learn that you don't have to control the whole pie. It doesn't really matter, actually, how much of the pie you control. It's sort of, I could own 100% of DUER. And if I'm not managing it well, I'm in trouble. What's important, if I own 40%, if I'm managing it well, I don't have to worry that I only own 40%. Like I think that taking other people's money who believe in you is not a bad thing, because you're going to have ups and downs, and it allows you to get through you have partners in it, and theoretically it helps you get through some of the difficult times. So I'd say that, that took me 50 years to learn. I had a lot of people wanting to invest in the businesses that I had before, and again, because everything I touched worked. I don't need their money. So that would be one thing.
What makes a good business partner or a good investor?
I would say, it's really like any relationship. I would like to think that I choose my partners like I would choose my spouse, right? You're not looking for someone, for sure. You don't my wife and I laugh, like, we're really different. And wouldn't it be boring if we were both the same, right? So you want partners who actually are different than you, that have different skill sets, right? That can complement my skill set. But of course, with a lot of mutual respect. So if you're going to be different, there's going to be differences of opinions. You got to be able to work through that. So emotional health, being able to have crucial conversations. But you don't want to, I don't recommend you get someone who's a mirror reflection of yourself, because then they're not really contributing anything.
Right. You're just going to be in an echo chamber.
I mean, maybe you'll get money, but if you want a real partner or investor who's somewhat contributing other than just money, then you want people who have come from different angles.
So it's more like puzzle pieces.
Absolutely.
that are going together when it comes to partners.
Absolutely.
And in relationships too, friendships,
Everything.
romantic partnerships,
Yeah.
they're puzzle pieces more than replicas.
Yeah. And the question with partners is not if you're going to have a disagreement, because
It'll happen.
You are going to have a disagreement. I can absolutely tell you, you wait long enough, you're going to have a disagreement. So the question is, how do you work through that?
Yeah, your communication styles. I have a few friends that before they got married, they actually went to therapists to determine, like, how do we fight and what is our communication style. So when that arose, they had the tools to approach that. Would you suggest that business partners do the same?
You know what? So if I may, first of all, my wife is a psychologist. Well, she's retired now, but we did the same thing before we got married. We've been married for, I think, 36 years or something like that. But we did what you were suggesting. And when I left law to go into business with my brother, we went into therapy together. It was something that I insisted on. It wasn't like he was objecting to it. And it was just basically, I'm very close to him. He's my only brother. I can find another business partner. It's really hard to find another brother, right?
Yes.
So let's protect that and just make sure that we can communicate. And he's still my best friend. So.
That's great. It worked.
It worked.
As we're landing the plane on this conversation, I just have a few more questions. If DUER succeeds in the deepest sense, not just commercially, maybe something a bit more intangible.
Yeah.
What changes for people?
Well, again, I think I'd answer that on two levels, and I'm not talking just because commercial success. To me, the product consumer relationship, like every true brand, whether it's explicit or not, is saying, this is what we can do for you, right? And they make a connection with their consumer, with their product. They're saying, this is going to help your life. And I've already spoken to that, like on a very literal level, we help people live more effortlessly. Make it easy to get dressed and get on with the important things like that. That's very literal. I think hopefully we are also, because we do talk about effortlessness, and there's this other level to it about getting glimpses of flow, which I think is very aspirational. I think it takes a lot of work. It's not simple. I would hope that we're maybe in a small way motivating people to look at that as an aspirational goal.
And in terms of one's arc of life, it's hard to imagine what that arc would be when you're younger. What feels most surprising and or joyous to you about where you've landed?
Now you're going to make me cry. Oh, what's most surprising or most joyful? Is that what you said about where I landed? God, how long do we have?
As long as you want.
I will tell you, I wake up every morning and, apart from being grateful for my, my three adult children and my wife who I love dearly, but I think it's just like I get to meet so many interesting people, like yourself, and have conversations with them, like meaningful conversations. And for me, that's everything. Like that's why I work still. It's not because of money. It's because I get to work with a bunch of people towards a common goal. And, I never was a good enough athlete to play varsity sports, but that you talk about flow, I don't know. I have played some sports and have got into flow. And my way of doing that now as a elder man is to do it with a team of people and building this brand. And I get to work and meet and struggle with so many great people, most of them much younger than me. I think I'm 25 years older than my senior management team, like than the youngest person on my senior management team, something like that. So I just to be engaged still, like I wake up in the morning and I'm a bit tired today but it's not uncommon because I wake up just because I'm so excited, like I'm a little kid. I want to get going, and how I think that's exceeds my expectations for where I would be at this stage in my life.
It's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. My final question that I ask everyone, with what you do, what is it that you want to leave behind in the world?
I'm hoping, again, I'm going to speak to it literally and maybe more metaphorically. I do believe that I talk a lot about to industry groups about the difference in my business between a label and a brand. And a label is based on trend in our business, and they come and go. They got a certain life cycle. But there's a few clothing brands that are truly built on the basis of values, and that's when they're enduring. And I'm hoping that DUER will, that my great grandchildren will be able to say, "Hey, my great grandfather had a part in that." That would be really nice. That's on the very literal side. I think more on the, but the other piece for me is, I think, there's the old exercise. You're walking away from your funeral. You're like a fly on the wall, and you're walking away from your funeral. What do you hope people are saying? And I hope they say that, he struggled, he learned some things, and he was able to maybe help some other people to avoid some of the struggle, right? That he could, as he got older, he could pass on some of the things that he learned, whatever that means.
Gary, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. I've enjoyed this. I hope we have more of these conversations. Don't have to be recorded, but I would love to have more of these with you because I've learned so much, and I feel grateful and honored. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. How was that?
You tell me.
I loved it.
I was just being me.
If you enjoyed that last conversation, be sure to check out more episodes with Craft on Spotify and guest photo galleries on the website at wearethecraft.com. Thanks again for listening.